Hello, hello. We are live on the internets. All right, so very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be tuning in from. Welcome. Welcome to the Pragmatic, AI show. In particular, we love to talk about people doing real things with AI. So I'm your host, Sam Basu. With me, I have my very good friend, Isaac. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
I am doing good as well. All right. So before we start talking, let me make sure everything is in place. We are streaming to all the places. So folks watching, we love to know where you're tuning in from. So please chime in chat. If you have any burning questions, concerns, or big things on your mind, please chime away in the Q&A. I will highlight and we'll ask Isaac some difficult questions. How about that?
Please, no difficult questions. Please, no difficult questions.
All right, so folks, thank you again. This is, like I said, the Pragmatic AI Show. I'm your host, Sam Basu. I'm a dev advocate with Uno Platform, and AI is changing how we live our lives at times, and definitely how we build software. So I have brought on Isaac today. I've known Isaac for many, many years, all around awesome, human being. But Isaac, I want to pick your brains on a lot of different things, but let's start by introducing yourself, please.
Sure. Well, my name's Isaac. Sam did a good job of doing that part. I'm a developer advocate at a company called JetBrains. We do developer tools, things like IntelliJ. If you're in the Java ecosystem, if you're in the .NET ecosystem, Writer, ReSharper. We also got some AI stuff like everybody else does, and we got some Teams-based stuff like Team City and UTrack and other stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the chat. Sam and I were joking a little bit before, like on, Twitter DMs, like I have a podcast as well, and his podcast is fancier because they're screen sharing in it, and mine is just talking heads, which I guess, according to Sam, is boring.
Oh, no, no, no. I mean,
So yeah,
it's the value that you get.
I see.
You get better
Yeah.
conversations. But
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my
let's
podcast,
actually, yeah,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah,
No,
so
no,
my
you go ahead.
podcast is called Coffee and Open Source. Talk to people in the tech spectrum. I've talked to all sorts of people that I have no business talking to. Like I've talked to the person who created Jenkins. I've talked to one of the founders of Kubernetes. I've talked to people like Scott Hanselman. I've talked to Kelsey Hightower. Coffeeandopensource.com if you want to check that out and listen to my voice, which I don't know why you would.
It's a very pleasant, calming voice.
Sure.
Yeah, and you're calling in from the western part of the United States, so Seattle area.
Yeah, I live about 25-ish minutes without traffic to Seattle. So
Right.
We're big Mariners fans. For people watching, like I play guitar and I like baseball. So my wife and I are season ticket holders, so we go to as many games as possible. So yeah, it's good. Baseball and computer science are developing, just go hand in hand, right?
Why not? And music as well. Like it's the similar
Yeah.
chords in your brain that fired things off. And so it's 11 a.m. Eastern my time. I'm in the East Coast of Americas, so it's 8 a.m. Your time. So thank you for getting up and early to do this. Let's get in. So and also, like, before we start, JetBrains, you're kind of new to this gig as well.
Yeah, I've been in there a little bit less than a month.
Congratulations.
Before that, I worked at Microsoft, worked at AWS, I've worked at Elastic, I've worked at Sonar. So I have a pretty interesting opinionated view of developer tools and how developers can be successful.
Yeah. So let's get into it. AI, how is that changing how you build software?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody at work yesterday about this because, I think we all hear anecdotes like, I don't write code anymore. Like I haven't typed a line of code in XXX, right? And I think what's very, very interesting about that is that we've switched from somebody who actually types in keys to somebody who reads lines. And I think that's very, very interesting because I've always heard like you only have so many keystrokes, so make them, make it worth it. I do
Famous
think that
Hanselman quote.
yeah,
Actually.
right.
Like our
Yeah, so
keystrokes are numbered.
Yeah, right. But if we don't do keystrokes anymore, do we get forever? Is there, since my keystroke, if I had 2,000 keystrokes left, like does that Anyway, that's a question about life.
Code
Um,
for
yeah, but I think, the fact that most people that grew up like in a, if they go through the traditional route, they go through a code camp or go through a proper university to study computer science and information systems, nobody teaches you like all of the squishy things about being a software developer. They teach you how to like algorithms, they teach you how to design systems. But once you actually start working in tech, the thing that ends up hitting you right in the face is like nobody really taught me how to like work with a PM. Nobody taught me how to like work with business, gather requirements, validate output, right? Like nobody teaches you this in college or in coding camps. Like they teach you how to like do the coding thing. Um, so it's very interesting to me because there's a lot of things that developers are being asked to do, which we typically haven't really done in the past, right? I think this is a similar sort of shift to when DevOps become very, very popular and developers started having to do like opsy things, like learning how to deploy things, learning scripting languages like PowerShell or Bash. And it's just been fascinating to me that we've kind of made this pivot and there's nobody acknowledging that like this is stuff that we're giving people job functions that they have never had before, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've also seen the term being thrown around quite a bit, which I mean, I kind of agree that, software and or like code is cheap these days,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
software building, exactly to your point, like the processes, that's not cheap because there is so much more. Like even the most hardcore engineers are actually writing code for maybe an hour or so. The
yeah.
rest of the time is figuring out what is it that we are building? How do the systems integrate? How do I work with different people? So none of that has gotten easy. It's just the code gen part has, it's super fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think to continue that trend, like the the idea that like our entire careers, like we've looked at this infinity symbol, right? Like the software development lifecycle. And that's completely broken now because one like key piece of the SDLC is free, like you said. So things like planning, but like the expectation is like, okay, code is free, so everything is faster. But that's not true because at the end of the day, everybody still has to plan. They have to test, they have to review, they have to deploy, they have to do telemetry and all of that. Like those things are still there. Those things are going away. The only thing that's really
Right.
free now is the coding part. So I'm curious is like, what's the next part of the SDLC that's going to be altered as we get more and more like agent dependent, right? Does that
Mhm.
mean that things like spec kit or like specification generation is going to be basically as important as code generation? Like user acceptance testing using agents, is that going to be more and more prevalent? Yeah, I mean it's interesting. And things are moving so fast that like if we were to talk in a year, it's like who knows like what tools would be out and what processes exist and all those sort of things.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And again, like things are evolving so fast. Like even like 6 months, prior, the models and the quality of the agents and the kind of stuff we were doing, it's completely different now.
Oh
So
yeah.
who knows what's going to happen in 6 months. So, okay, so that's on the high level, but let's talk about your everyday life. Like, how have your tools, your workflows changed?
Yeah, it's funny. For folks that don't know me, like I used to work at Microsoft and I used to contract at Microsoft. So I'm very like heavy in the Microsoft technology stacks. Like I've been a .NET developer my entire professional career. I know how to write code in other languages, but at the end of the day, like I end up building things in .NET more than anything else. So like I'm in tools that most .NET developers know, like Visual Studio or JetBrains Writer or whatever, right? And the introduction of like code like agent first editors has been very very interesting to me, like the cursors and the windsurfs and the anti-gravities of the world,
Yeah,
because I don't think that we figured out like an effective way to like show that experience of like interacting with agents, right? I still think like when you work with an agent, it's very much like a black box. You put in your prompt, maybe you select an MCP server, maybe you do some skill thing, and then you hit enter, and then like you just see like hunting for rabbits, or like some silly little like message like in the prompt, right, or in the chat, and then it just gives you like a bunch of output, and then you have some files that get added or updated. um and I don't know because maybe this is a bit of a rant, but like we're developers, so we're used to seeing things a very specific way. You have your code in the middle, you have your toolbar, you have your extensions, you have like, and all these things. And I felt like a lot of the new like AI first editors don't show us a really effective way to see like what agents are doing. It's still like the same thing, or it's like a giant chat box with like a side view of like agents that are running. So like one of the things that I've been doing a lot is playing around with all these different tools and trying to figure out like which one makes the most sense. And back to your question about like what I like my developers, I'm very boring. Like I have a couple of agents that I like, I have a couple of models that I like, and I party on them. I've done a little bit more exploring into like local agents or local models because I think that's where we're headed. You see the pricing changes for all of these, foundational models or foundational tools that wrap models. And I just don't think that long term, the prices are going to get to a point where they're commodities. So there's going to be a dependency more and more on people running models locally or people hosting their own models in their own data centers or whatever, right? So
yeah, it's good for privacy, and also maybe like AI trying to get us glued on and hooked on early came up with a cost structure that may not be sustainable in the long run. And then how much of the public cloud do you want to use? So yeah, I see your point, like local models and local agents. That might be the way a lot of people get stuff done. Okay, so do you want to show me some of your setup and how you,
sure.
what type of tools you use?
Yeah, if you want to share my screen, like I have Writer up. So folks that don't know, like Writer is it's like specializes like in .NET and game development. It looks like any other like IDE that you've seen. How we interact with agents and models is we have a tool called AI Chat or AI Assistant. Basically what it is, it's a wrapper for models, and there's some harness built into it. So like I can go into here and I can specify like agent mode, plan mode, autopilot, and I can change like what agents that I want and all those sort of things. I can specify agents that follow like the ACP registry. So ACP is like, agent client protocol. It's an open standard. So like I have Claude and Codex and GitHub Copilot. I'm a Microsoft MVP, so I get like a lot of Copilot stuff. So rightfully so, I use that a lot. And then so forth. And you can install custom ones, like Gemini has one, and like you can go to the ACP website and there's a huge list of them. So I like that's typically how I do most of my work. And one thing that I've realized over time is, the ability to be able to quickly iterate is great, but I also like to play around with different actual models too. So like you have all these models here. But yeah, I think typically like I'm in the Sonnet world. Like I don't really ever mess with Opus. Not because I can't afford it, because I like I said, I get a lot of like access to tokens, but I just I haven't seen like this huge productivity gain like a lot of people have said. I also am not building crazy software. Like I typically build things for demos or some side projects. Like this solution that's open, it's a app called Video Splitter that I basically I create a tool that allows me to take a long form video and split it up into smaller videos using AI. And I built this like a vibe coded thing, and I've done some modifications to it with like actual keystrokes to go back to not wasting keystrokes. But I did all of it basically in Sonnet 4.6 and 4.5. And I'm happy with the result. Yeah,
the sonnets are good enough. I mean, unless you are really at the cutting edge and counting milliseconds of productivity, you're fine.
Yeah, and that works. Like if I'm building like I guess like apps that I would assume that I need like a more robust developer experience, like .NET, like you need a debugger, you need all these things, right? So I use Writer for that. And if I'm using if I'm playing around with like like a JavaScript app, or for instance, let me just pull this up. Like this is Air. This is like our sort of like agent first sort of tool that we have at JetBrains. And this is like my podcast. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is my podcast, like static website. And that it's nothing is crazy. So like you can create tasks, you can have them run in the cloud, you can do you can define tasks and do all that sort of thing. Typical like what you do in all those other tools. So I play around with this a bit. Like if I'm doing things that don't require like a ton of debugging, or if I don't need like test generation or test running, I do that sort of in here. This is like, I've started to kind of transition away from VS Code to this because I've realized that my VS Code experience, like I have so many extensions that VS Code is like as powerful as Visual Studio or Writer is. And if I just want to like do some very, very small like agent work, I do that here in Air.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, because like you
Sure,
kind of referred to it at the beginning, where like if you come from a traditional dev background, you're used to seeing code, and maybe with agents you want to see those code changes.
Yeah.
As you pivot away maybe from these traditional IDEs like VS Code or Writer into Air, or I don't know if you have used the GitHub Copilot app. I mean, similar ideas. Like
I have
the
a little
agent,
bit, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, you see less and less of what the agent is doing. So does that bother you, or do you want to jump into code when you need to?
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. It's very, very hard to kind of give away something that I've been doing for like the last 15 years, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I understand that there are things that I am now capable of doing that I've never been capable of doing before. Like,
Right.
like one thing, like I built like some Chrome extensions, and I had never built Chrome extensions before. I had an idea. I'm like, oh, this might be a cool extension to build. And yeah, I could go out to like the Google developer page and I can like, clone their template and do all that. Or I could have just gone into an editor and just say, hey, generate me a default template that does blah, 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 blah. And then I hit enter. And then since Chrome extensions are all in JavaScript, I can just do all the JavaScript things that I need, similar to like a Stream Deck plugin. There is a very, very well-known social media platform that has changed names, that there was a Stream Deck plugin for it, but it went away because of reasons. So I wrote my own Stream Deck plugin to be able to post to that social media platform. And again, I don't know how to build Stream Deck plugins, but I know JavaScript. Yeah. So get me all the way to where I can start writing JavaScript, and then I'm good to go. And then just the velocity of things, right? Being able to, build an app that would probably take me a few months. Like it takes me like a weekend, or not even a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, it is remarkable, the switch over. And again, I see the point, like people who are purists, like it's a craftsmanship, that we have built up over decades, but, we just cannot hold on to our old habits. It's kind of like, industrial revolution. We can push back, but you can see the benefits. And this is invariably going to, take over and, change how we build. And to your point, like, the things we can build are just remarkable with the velocity. Like I work at a platform, and the kind of apps we can pull off, it'll take me months and months to build the kind of animations and the UI that we can show off in our apps, and just the velocity is remarkable.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something that I've been playing around with a lot more and more, and I'm frantically trying to pull up Visual Studio Code because Visual Studio Code has this experience. You mentioned something around the lines of like, how do I see things, or how do I figure out what's going on, right? Let me just move this over. Like this is a cool thing that exists in VS Code, and I don't know if you see it, have seen it, but let me just close all these windows. Good Lord. There is this concept called agent debug logs in VS Code, and I played around with this a lot. So like this is for my podcast. Again, I'm just going to plug my stupid podcast, but like I have a custom skill that I wrote that basically like helps me stage guests. So when I click on that, I can, and all these logs are prompts that I put in. So like if I was to go back to my Copilot window, I can show you like all the prompts that were run. So like I can click on one of these and it'll show me like all of the steps that have taken like as my prompt is run. So like I can go and view logs, and it'll tell me like all the different responses and instructions that have been sent in, and I can see this like in a tree view or a list view. But like this is the coolest thing here is like I submit a prompt, like this is my original prompt, my user message, and then it shows me like how many tokens were spent hitting a particular model, what the custom instruction was. So it basically what it does is it gives me a bit more of like unboxing of what happens, because like we were joking about earlier, it's like hunting for rabbits, or I'm trying to, drain the ocean, or like whatever the silly little things that you see like in the prompt or in the chat message where like the actual harness is running things. You don't actually see any of that stuff usually put on the screen unless it's asking for your permission or is editing some file. But like this actually shows you like all the individual steps, which I think is super valuable. And you can actually see like the agent response for this, right? So I've confirmed blah, 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 and it shows you the tool calls and all that. And this is like helped me understand how complex it is when I say, hey, do this thing for me, enter, which I think is super helpful, especially if you're curious like me, who just wants to understand like what's going on.
So is this a custom built, like a extension to a harness, or what is this?
No, this is like built into Visual Studio Code. So this is specifically, really? Yeah. So like if you go to command palette and you go to developer open agent debug logs. Yeah. So it's super helpful for me to kind of discern what's going on when I do different things. And because of the fact that like this kicks off like actually, let me just do this. I forget the hotkey to pull that up. So let's just go to chat. We'll just do this.
Let's and you have mentioned, by the way, this a few times. I will sign up. I think you shared an URL.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So by the way, if anybody watching, like, coerce Sam to be on my podcast. But like basically, like I can just say, like, tell me about the guests that have been on the podcast that like .NET, right? So as you can see here, when I hit submit here, it actually spins up like a new agent debug log, and it says that it's active. So it'll show me like all the input tokens, the output tokens, the tool calls. And if I go in and look at the flowchart, it starts showing me all things like it's hitting for Sonnet 4.6. It's showing all the different tool calls, showing the response. And this is actually like working in real time against a running agent. So, you know, when this gives me some result, it'll pout back. But like, this has been super helpful for me because, again, I'm curious on like how complex these things are. And you can look at a cache explorer too, and it'll show you like what's getting cached, what's being stored in memory, what's not being stored in memory, and all those sort of good things.
Yeah. I just pulled up the URL. This, by the way, is the podcast that Isaac hosts. Yeah, Coffee Open Source. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, so this debug log is available for us to see. I mean, no matter what agent you're using.
Yeah, so this will work for any agent. So like, let me. Do I have another? I don't think I have any other agents set up in this version of VS Code.
That's fine,
but you definitely can. So like, if you're running against Claude Code, if you're running against Codex, like it'll work for them as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things. So let me ask on that front. So skills, MCPs, sub-agents, all the different ways for us to bring context and steer the agent to do things the way we want. So what are some of your preferences and how do you like to get things done?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit vanilla. Like, I don't do a lot of exploring for custom MCP servers or skills because of the work that I do. Most of those things are built into the harness already. Like, I'm a .NET developer. There's already really good .NET skills built into most of these harnesses, right? You know, the .NET team has provided a ton in that regard. For MCP, like, I do a lot of things that involve, like, building websites or testing websites. So, like, I've been using the Playwright. I use the Playwright MCP to be able to do that. But to be completely honest, I haven't felt a need for me, like, as a developer to go out and find, like, I guess, boutique things like boutique skills or boutique MCP servers. Because most of them, like if I need one, they're usually just, it shows up when I install some extension. Like if I install an extension, like, okay, I need like the Python extension I'm building some Python app. And then it'll like bring in all the necessary skills and whatever other tools that are needed to be able to do that. So I don't have I know that's boring, but I don't have a lot of things that have gone out to the internet and like, I need a tool that does this specific thing. I haven't really had a need for that as I go through my development.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, like the platform or, you know, the tooling providers should be the ones bringing that context to you anyway. So like in my side of the world, like we have a heavy need for that because we, again, never want the agents to be guessing. So, you know, you mentioned Playwright. So maybe I can steal like 5-10 minutes from you and show you like how we see things and, you know, why the need for those MCPs and skills are very clear in our world because we are maintaining like a vertical stack.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as much as I love sharing my screen, I would love to not share my screen. So you can go ahead. Let's see.
No. Let's talk through like anything else. I always like asking my guests. So extensions. You have
Yep.
quite a few on the left. So what are
Too
some
many.
things
Too
that
many.
you cannot live without? Do you use profiles to switch up which extensions you want to use based on the type of work you're doing?
No, I tried doing that once and then I got real. What ended up happening over the course of time is I had two profiles that had like the exact same extensions on them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so what I typically do sometimes if I just need like an editor in VS Code, like I'll just open up VS Code without extensions. I think it's like VS Code in safe mode or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, I think I mentioned this a bit earlier. I've also started to steer away from VS Code more and more. The reason why I show VS Code is because VS Code has this particular feature that I think is really helpful. But if I want to do something that's not as, I guess, busy, like I'll open up Cursor or Air, like I was showing earlier. The problem with all these tools too is like, I'll just open up Cursor, for instance. So if I open up Cursor, like what is the first, like, I don't know how last time you opened up Cursor, but like that, like when you open up Cursor, like what's the first thing that you see?
My old like tools, old projects that it
Yeah.
has, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Cursor is taking forever to load. But like it comes up in this mode, right? It's like, and what is this mode? This is not what I want, right? This is like the agent view in Cursor. So I have to go in here, I have to click another button to pull up the IDE, and that drives me nuts, right? So, but what I typically do is I'll open up like one of these. This is I see as like a lighter editor. But yeah, like as you can see here, like I got way too many. Like, so, but what I typically like if I just want to see some basic stuff, there's a couple of really cool like GitHub Copilot like Insight plugins, or like Rob Boss created one which I use. I think it's called. Oh no, I'm sorry, Rob. What's it called? Copilot Insights, I think is what it's called. If Rob's watching, I'm sorry, I can't remember what the name of it is. But it's an extension that gives you more information about your like Copilot usage. So it'll show you like the tokens in, tokens out, like the effective, like the naming conventions for MCPs or tools. It's been super helpful for me to like just have an understanding of how much like energy I'm wasting when I'm doing silly things. But yeah, I typically, especially if I'm interacting with like if I know I'm not going to write any code, I try not to be in an IDE that takes up a ton of system resources or is slow. But again, back to what I was saying, like if it's a .NET app where I need to have like a full speed, like full feature, like IDE, where I have to like actually run it or test it or whatever, then I end up going back to like the IDEs that we know and love.
Right. And again, like to your point, like Visual Studio, Rider, these bring so much more because I mean they're full-blown IDEs, so they're testing harnesses, they're debugging harnesses. Everything else is much more mature. But yes, it's a footprint. They are consuming more because they are bringing more to the table.
Yeah, this is the extension, by the way. It's called AI Engineering Influency. It's created by Rob Boss, who's like an MVP. He is based in Europe, but basically just gives you a ton of information about like what you're doing with AI. And it gives you some tips, it gives you some cool things. So I use that a lot. So like it gives you like a Copilot fluency score, which I always play around with. It's like how well are you using Copilot? And then some other interesting things. So I use that a lot.
Like how frivolously are we wasting electricity?
Exactly.
To do
exactly.
stuff.
Well, that's kind of the thing too. Like to kind of go back to what we were talking about like local models, right? Like I feel like I read some article. It was probably a few months ago, so it's probably not outdated. Like every ChatGPT prompt is like the equivalent of like 7 seconds of a microwave running from an energy consumption perspective, which I don't know how accurate that is. Whatever. But I guess my point is we could be using energy substantially more effectively and efficiently. And like, that's why I've been playing around with local models to do that more and more.
And actually, to that point, what's your to go? Like, what type of models, if at all, are you running locally?
Yeah, so like I use Olama, and actually I wanted to start playing around with this new Ornith model that came out a couple weeks ago because I heard it's really good. So like I'll use Ollama poll to get it down, but then like to interact with a particular model, I use Open Web UI. I don't know if you've heard of Open Web UI. So basically, think of Open Web UI as a wrapper for Ollama. So because Ollama, if you just look at it, like what does Ollama give you? It gives you like a chat window. So like I can say like tell me a joke or whatever, right? Tell me a joke because I can't spell. But like it'll churn and churn and churn, and then it gives you some response, right? You don't have like any additional things installed on top of that model. You're just making a raw call against the model. And what Open Web UI gives you is an ability to like build things around the model. So you can do this idea of like creating knowledge. So you can like train the model, or you can like train on top of like an existing code base or external resources like PDFs or Google Docs or whatever. And then you can sit that knowledge on top of the model. So basically you're doing more or less effectively RAG to be able to like do, but you're doing it locally.
Right.
And I'm not going to go through a demo because usually when I work with local models, like it takes forever, and my CPU utilization is like 70% right now. Like, and that's another thing too, is that the hardware hasn't gotten there yet. Like this machine that I'm on right now, you know, I built it with like the top of the line custom specs less than a year ago. So it's got like a really fast processor. It's got like the best GPU that exists. I have a 5090, and it's got 100 gigabytes of RAM, and it's still dragging.
Still not enough.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, you know, I think we're going to need to get to a point where these models are, and this model is a very large parameter model because I wanted to play around with it. But like if I go here, I can go into my settings, or wrong place. I can go into my workspace and I can do knowledge. So I can add knowledge to it. I can create a knowledge base. I can add stuff to it. And then I can specify like what the underlying model that it sits on top of that knowledge base. And then I can point that at this to be able to kind of query things.
So you're building a little bit of like a RAG around the model call.
Yes,
so it's
exactly.
a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, so that's what I do for local stuff. And you can actually do this too inside of VS Code or other tools. Like you can point them locally at things that you're running in Ollama as well to get like, if I want, get a Copilot on top of this model. But sometimes I just want to play around with things without having to go externally out to the world, right?
Yeah. And to your point, like, I mean, these models are different in sizes and capabilities. So maybe there are like smaller, more efficient models, but then your mileage is going to vary. You know what you get out of it. So I think you mentioned this before. Like, is there a case where we could see enterprises, because now it's a hardware limitation, like running things much more local without, within their firewalls? So maybe they deploy, more and more of these local models, and you have all the hardware to run it, except you're just not going out to the cloud for everything.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where we are headed. I think that there's two things that need to kind of come into place. I think, firstly, hardware needs to become less expensive, which who knows when that's going to happen. But also, I think operating systems are going to need to be a bit more effective in how we do something. Like if you're running in, like if you have a MacBook and you're using like some version of OS X, or if you're using Windows, like this experience isn't that great. Like, running in Ollama, and then I have another thing on top of Ollama, and I'm doing all this stuff, and my CPU utilization is really high, or my GPU utilization is really high, or I'm using a ton of memory. That's a huge barrier to entry for folks, because not everybody has the privilege to afford like a machine that costs $4,000, right? So it's one of those things where once we get those two things sort of in line, like, and the operating systems are optimized to run models locally, I think things will start to kind of come to fruition and be a bit more successful. And I think the industry is going to start demanding that, because, paying OpenAI or Anthropic for access to these models, the prices are only going up, and the tools like GitHub Copilot and Cursor, like they're changing their pricing models, so things are becoming not as available. And it just makes a ton of sense for people to want to use open weight models that they they have access to those things. That's why you're seeing this huge uptick in like some of the DeepSeeks and the Kimmys of the world, right? You can do a lot more for a lot less with those models, which, for a lot of people, especially hobbyist developers that want to just play around with AI, they don't have access to an enterprise credit card. You're giving those people access to things that typically wouldn't be able to access before.
Right. Yeah. Well said. All right, so that's a whirlwind look at your workflows and how you get stuff done in a day. Any other tools, any other beloved things that you use every day?
Yeah, I mean, I have some stuff like internally at JetBrains that we have that are pretty cool that I can't show, but I think one of the things that I have started to play around with more and more is like you have one agent do something that's like in one proprietary system, and then you go out to another proprietary system and basically have another agent that does
Oh yeah,
the like the review work, right?
like
Um,
pitching them against each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I know that's like everybody probably that's watching this is like, hey, Isaac, like everybody does that. Like, why? But um I think one of the things that I see people struggle with right when they get started using AI is they just point it at some model and they just have that model do everything instead of like having the models do different tasks. You know, the idea of like multi agents is something that I think a lot of people don't really use in practice, where it's like, maybe I have one agent. If I'm building a website, one agent is like specify like just do CSS. Another agent is like just do API development. Another agent is like just do um
Code reviews
whatever.
or
Yeah,
testing. Yeah.
code reviews or test generation or creating like my DevOps pipeline, and have all of them run in parallel. um I think a lot of people aren't doing that. I also think that like the user experience for seeing those things is very challenging right now. Like if I have 4 agents running,
Yeah.
I start to like lose track of what's going on.
It's
And
a
there's some
cognitive
really
load. It's
yeah,
absolutely is.
and there's
And I
some really
mean,
great tools out there like Squad, which is what Brady
yeah,
Gaster created. Like that's super
yeah.
helpful. But like that's a command line based tool, and I have an opinion on all this stuff being
Right.
command line based anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So, I mean, the way I see it is, all of these agents can be autonomous if you give them a lot of context and
yeah,
specs and
yeah,
things to fall back on before they don't, keep asking you every minute, like, what's the next thing I should do and asking for permission. But all of that needs setup, right?
yeah.
So when I see people saying, oh, I'm running 5 agents, like, how much effort have you put in to make them autonomous so you don't have to look at 5 terminals nonstop, right? That's the
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, I also struggle with because I've been as somebody who creates content like you do, like I'm always trying to figure out like ways like okay, like what can I do with AI to like make my job a bit more efficient. And I was watching some video so I don't know if folks care about this, but DaVinci Resolve, which is like a video editing tool sort of to like the Adobe Premiere sort of thing. Like there's an MCP server for it. And
Mhm.
I was watching some video of some guy like walking through using like the DaVinci Resolve like MCP server, like basically using chat to edit videos. And
Interesting.
yeah, and I was watching it, and afterwards, I was like, okay, so what productivity gain did you get from this? Because basically, he was the goal of his demo that he was showing was like basically clearing out like gaps in audio. Like he was doing some voiceover, and he did like a long recording, and he basically instead of me clipping out like the gaps in this audio, I'm gonna have this MCP server do it. And when it was done, he still went in there and did all the work anyway. And this is one of the things I struggle with a lot of these AI tools is that if you trust it blindly, you're not going to be happy with the results. So you have to
Right.
go in there and you end up having to do a lot of the work anyway.
Mhm.
And similar to when you do code reviews for humans, it's not the best experience like reviewing code that somebody else wrote. So but then at least you can go to them and get context. When it's an AI agent, like they're not going to provide you any context. They're just going to tell you what you want to hear. And that's where I struggle with. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like how do you be like 100% productive with these tools if you have to kind of circle the wagons over and over and over again just to get something very simple done?
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned something that is, I think, critical, that the agents are there to impress you so that you don't
Yes.
go switch to somebody else, right? So a
Yeah.
lot of the output that you get depends on what you're feeding it and what you want out. Because otherwise they're just happy to impress you and keep doing the things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I've seen so many videos with people like this is the system prompt that you use to like get the agents or get the models to like not be like way too subservient, right? Like, but I've never seen it like effectively work. Yes, I've seen it like, okay, like make the agent talk to me like I'm like it's mean or whatever. But like I haven't seen one demo, and maybe you've seen it, where somebody is like, typed in something incorrect and it corrects you. I've never seen that like consistently effectively, where it's like, oh, I want to create a for loop and like maybe do something like this, and then the agent comes like, actually, that's not the best idea. You should do it like this. I've really never seen that.
Pushing back, I have seen where and again, it takes work. It's not free. Where you kind of train the agents to go into a plan mode. So it's going to ask you like 20 things and push back before it actually does anything. But again, it's not out of the box. People with a lot of complicated setups have gotten to a point where Claude or GitHub Copilot isn't just doing stuff. They are pushing back. They're asking questions about the code base, and just second guessing and validating what you are actually wanting to get done. But
I think the point is that I want to stress and your thoughts is like, are we ever going to get to a point where we can blindly trust these tools? And I think the answer is probably yes at some point in the future. But at this exact moment, I'm just like my work has moved from one discipline to another. And sometimes it's like, okay, cool. Like, look how productive I am. I just built like this giant app in like 2 days. Or sometimes it's like, okay, well, now I don't know what any of this code does. If I want to fix something, I don't know where to go. I don't want to waste tokens like basically being dumb to the thing like I can't find where the blah 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 is. Where are you doing that? So I'm being like, so I'm moving productivity from one area to another area. And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts as to like, is that a good thing or a bad thing for Sam? Because I think I'm very complacent on the idea of like completely offloading all of my developer work to agents. And my job is to type prompts.
Yeah. And it is a challenge because, like, what if, like, with our dependencies of, shipping stuff, and I mean, if we talk about the other extreme of, shipping software, where you're not even reviewing code, you're just, trusting the agent to do the right thing, because hopefully you've given it enough context and, guardrails, and then you're maintaining it, right? As think of it as an enterprise dev. What if, Claude or Copilot is down for a day? Like, how do you get stuff done? Because you don't know anything about what you're shipped. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, and I think there's also like the security concerns. Like we're recording this like, in like July 23rd, and OpenAI just like posted some blog post about how they had an agent that was doing testing and it was able to like get access to the public internet, and it was able to kind of do some crazy things in the Hugging Face infrastructure. And my immediate response when I read that blog post is like, OpenAI is kind of bragging about how powerful their models are. And I don't know if that's for the benefit of humanity, if like the people that are giving us the tools are like proud the tools do things they're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so philosophical questions here, my friend.
Sure.
Yeah. So actually, going back to some of the things you said, if you want, I can actually take like 5-10 minutes to show you what my world looks like, including your tools in the mix.
I would love to see. I would love to see how somebody else is figuring out how to do things properly. Because I'm not doing it properly. I'm just.
Oh no, you're doing very well. So let me see if I can share my screen. Where is stuff? Share screen. Okay, and there you see mine.
Yep.
Ooh, look, I have Writer open, but it's in dark mode, so it's going to be hard to read. I can switch over, but actually, let me give you a context of what my world looks like and where some of those contextual things are very important, because we are actually the makers of the platform, and anybody who makes like a platform has to think about these things. So where is my stuff? So here's my browser. I'm going to go to platform.uno. So this is our open source stack for you to build cross-platform .NET apps, right? So, you and me love .NET. This is .NET front and back. So the whole thing is open source, has been for like 15 plus years now. So it's very mature. We take your .NET code, C# or XAML, to all the places. So iOS, Android, WebAssembly to all the browsers, and desktop targets like Windows, Mac OS, Linux, embedded systems, wearables, you name it, right? So that's the open source stack. So we own it, vertically, end to end. So we have to, think about the developer tooling quite a bit, because we want developers to fall into a pit of success, no matter what be the tools, IDs that you're using, CLI tools, or agentic workflows, right? So there's a lot of maturity in this. We don't hold back. It's agnostic to your OS, to your tools. Very easy to get started. Command line tools, project templates, and it's a true single source code and a project that you're getting at the end of it. So on top of it is what we have built up called Uno Platform Studio. So this is a collection of tools that are meant to bring context, in particular to your agentic workflows. There are some manual things in here as well. So have you done any, old school Windows desktop dev, Isaac? Like
Yeah, I built
WPF?
like a ton of WPF apps. Yeah.
There you go. So have I. And maybe we are scarred, but maybe those are fond memories. But we
Sure.
don't have the modern WYSIWYG way of editing UI in modern.NET quite as much. So we have kind of rebuilt it with hot design and hot reload all together. I can show you some of that. But again, like the MCP tools that bring context to your AI, the skills so that agents know exactly what to do and how to do things. So those are all things we have to provide, because it's a vertical stack. And sure, I mean, agents can grok through the internet. They can look at our docs, but we don't want to leave anything to guesswork, right? We want people to be able to have solid guidance and solid code generation, no matter what agents they're using. So that's my everyday world, and our team, that this is what we deal with every day. But one thing you will notice is right here from our homepage, there's a text box, right? There's a text box on the internet asking you to say what type of apps can you build, and this
Sure.
if you look at some of the other web-based tools for app generation, there are plenty of those. But what I find is they're not meant to be enterprise app. They're prototyping tools, and a lot of the times they'll just pick React. They are good at building web apps. They're not very good at building anything else, because that's the thing that they know how to build and show. So this is actually for .NET. So if I actually log in, this is the experience that you get. I want you to notice that this is an entirely .NET app done entirely in the browser. This is actually WASM, so WebAssembly. So you can start with the prompt, and exactly how you start with the prompt with any of the other web things. The difference here is we are spinning up a full .NET cross-platform app. So, I could start with the prompt, or we have a couple of gallery of things to pull up. So I'm going to pull up like a CRM app. So what we're doing here is in a workspace in WASM. So we are spinning up a full .NET app that is cross-platform. So I can take the same .NET app, run it on iOS or Android, Windows, Mac, and all those things. So it's spinning up, and it's got a whole agent, working on it to build it. So it takes a couple of seconds, but you can see what you get.
Yeah.
So this is all in the browser, right? So I get what my app looks like on a mobile view, like a light mode, dark mode. It's not a true simulator because we are on the web, but I can see what it looks like on a slightly bigger tablet form factors. And again, anytime I'm ready, I can hit the export button, at which point it just downloads everything that it's built in the browser. And now I'm in my IDE, or I'm in my CLI. But my agent is always there. I can actually, go do more things where I can, I can be in interactive mode where I can, click around and I can use my app like I'm using it. Or I can actually go into design mode, which is the selection view. So I have all of my UIs. Again, for you and me with WPF or WinForm stays, I can drag and drop all of my UIs right here. I can, click in, and then it shows me here you are on the visual tree. It shows me all of the properties of the thing that I'm trying to change. So it's a very, easy WYSIWYG experience. It's what we have created. And again,
are you able to see the code for this?
Yeah,
like
not here. And again, that's something we're actually working on to make that easy. And it's a balancing act. Like, how much do you want to see? Because the agent is here.
Yeah.
And the agent has skills and MCP tools. Like, do you want to see code right in here? Maybe. But the point is, you're going to iterate on this as far as you want, and then you're going to hit one export button, and we drop you down. To whichever
that's really cool. I struggle with like, for instance, in this example, right? Like, what if I wanted to like change like some subtle CSS thing that I knew how to do? Like, is there an
Yeah,
ability to like instead of going to the agent and saying, "Hey, can you like
yeah,
the new bar it's blue, can you make that
right.
I don't know, pink or something like that?"
Sure,
So
sure.
something that you, yeah,
Yeah, so what we do is this whole like there's no CSS here because it's XAML. So
sure,
we're
of
doing
course. Oh
XAML
yeah, yeah.
styles, but the same thing. So I can bring in all types of styles. So every property that my UI has, I have a visual way of interfacing and changing
Yeah,
it up
that's
right
cool.
here. Yeah. So again, as a .NET developer, all of this feels very familiar. But
Sure.
then once I download this, once I get down into my local environment, I can use any of my IDEs. And here's your beloved writer, right?
Yeah,
Writer is
awesome.
amazing. Yeah, Writer has so much to it. So right in here, you'll notice, and actually, if I pull up our docs, so you'll notice that we are pretty agnostic, right? So we have to think
Sure.
about, the
Yeah,
dev
yeah.
experience, so VS Code, Visual Studio, Writer, all of those things. So if I go into Writer, it's saying, hey, go run that CLI tool because it's a
Yeah.
cross-platform app. It's never easy. You do have to depend on the underlying SDKs, iOS, Android, Windows. So go get that. Then we can do a build. It's a true cross-platform app, and raw bits that we can convert into native bits. So we have extensions. So again, once I am set up, I can come into JetBrains Writer and I can say, give me a new solution. And then right there is my extension. So I can
Yeah.
set up my runtime, what type of things I want in my app, like a full on templated
That's awesome.
experience. So yeah, you have that. What
Yeah.
helps here, go ahead. Sorry. Were you going to say
No, I
something?
was just like I think the point that that I love about this is the fact that you talk about like the WYSIWYG editor, right? Like I think if you've
Hmm.
been a .NET developer for a certain amount of time, like you very much like yearn for the days of web forms and Windows forms, right? Where it's like, okay, let me just drop this here. I can change the color in a drop down, and this is like what that is, except it's substantially better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So what it's doing here is like this is a very simple like a hello world platform app in Rider because I started from the template. So it's actually loading it up. I didn't have to hit like F5 to run it. It's like a simple counter app. But what you see here is that same experience that you saw on the web. So here I can go into what we call like the hot design. So this is the same experience. So I can be interactive here. I can actually click on the counter and the counter goes up or I can go into design mode and I have all of this UI. So I can drag and drop. I can actually go into design mode and I can now actually select things. And now it says, hey, you are in this main page with a stack panel, a couple of text boxes and buttons, right? So very easy ways, the same experience pretty much, right? And again, one click, the whole thing goes away and I'm back to my, little app. So that's the experience. But what helps is, again, to your point of, who brings the context, we have to bring the context here, right? So if I show you some of the MCPs, this is all pre-wired in. So
sure.
again, we want, agentic experiences to be, somewhat deterministic. So we have a docs MCP, so the agent, Junie or Claude or Copilot, they're always reading our docs. So you never have to leave the ID. It's all right there. And then you mentioned Playwright. Did you use that quite a bit?
I do, yeah. So like, I yeah, I think that the short answer is yeah. So somebody who's
Hmm.
worked in the web or worked like having to, you know, whether it's testing or getting content from websites, like I've used Playwright a ton. I used to use the HTML agility pack back in the day. I used
Hmm.
Selenium back in the day, and when Playwright came out, I was like, oh, this is like substantially
Yeah,
better and it's cleaner, and
right.
the community seems to have adopted it really quickly. So I use Playwright a ton.
Yeah. However, Playwright is awesome, but it's only for web apps, right? So what
Yeah,
happens if you're actually building native .NET
sure.
apps for desktop and web and mobile? So this is our response. So this is essentially Playwright plus plus, if you can think of it. So these are app MCP tools, which are all about interactivity. So they will check the app health. They will give you direct runtime access to be able to click on things, to be able to type in text or do a key press, right? So you have a way of validating what the agent is essentially generating for you. And all of this is wired up, so you don't have to do much. So, here's our running app. So if I go back into Writer, so all of this is MCP. Let me bump up the fonts. It's too small here. Hold on. Can I not do Command Plus? Oh, apparently not.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you go to view
View.
in the
All right.
yeah, and then there is appearance.
Appearance.
Yep. Yeah. So you can zoom IDE.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting. I did not know that. Okay, there we go.
So that just
So
doesn't just zoom. That zooms everything. That zooms
right,
code.
right.
That zooms
Everything, which
the
is good.
menu. Everything.
It's
Yeah.
exactly what I want. So in here, like I can, to your point, like I can use anything like Junie, Codex, Claude, or anything else like that. But what's nice is I can do whack, MCP, and it should bring up those, MCP servers right in here.
Yep.
So it's already wired up, so I never have to leave. And I could say things like, let's test the counter button, maybe. So it has to figure out like what is the app process. Sometimes it might fail, but it's trying to look through a visual tree, right? So
Yep.
it's taking screenshots. It's trying to see, oh, the counter is at 2. I'm going to invoke the button programmatically. So it's like a key press, and it's going to try to figure out the state, the counter. See the test
Yeah.
pass. It's now
That's
at
awesome.
3. So all of this is programmatic. So now if I go back to the app, it's 3. So think about your like UI suites, testing scenarios where you could have like a set of test suites that you just want to fire away and say, hey agent, go run all of these things. The agent has essentially eyes and hands to be able to see all of that. So Writer is amazing, gives me all of the tools right in here. But we bring the context if you are building cross-platform platform apps.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody, I've been aware of Uno for a while, and I've used it in the past. I think one of the things that I have started to figure out is I'm becoming more and more dependent on tools that are like very much like one-up developer productivity things.
Mhm.
Like, I used to be somebody that I would go and I'd find like some Blazor, like, or some Maui or some WPF, like component library, whether it was paid or open source. And I would just like figure out with the docs how to like add those to my apps. And now, like, with tools like, like, do I even care? Like, I
Yeah.
just want to look good. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's, as somebody who I don't have like the best aesthetic eye, I just want something, I just know something looks good or doesn't look good. I don't know how to make something look good. So,
And maybe
yeah.
that's the point of these tool sets. Like, and then again, like in the .NET ecosystem, we have had very rich tooling, like the Telerik, DevExpress, Syncfusion, Infragistics. All of those guys make it easy for folks like you and me who don't know how to make it look good, kind of fall into a successful thing where it looks good out of the box.
Yeah.
So and maybe we are getting, like, to your point, like we are moving the goalposts. Like it's
Yeah.
like, who does the work? Like, hey agent, go get these UI toolkits, make it look nice.
Yeah.
But like, how much do you understand?
Well, and I think, I've said this 1,000 times, like with people, and I've said it on my podcast a bunch, like I, I very much am in the belief that the job of a developer has not changed with the
Mhm.
introduction of AI. I do not think that's the case.
Yeah.
I think that as an engineer, we have always been responsible for two things, and that is properly identifying input, or sorry, properly gathering input and properly identifying output.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all about like, am I gathering the right requirements? Am I doing the right thing? And then does it work on the back end? And in the middle, we would write code. And I think
Right.
now, like, the middle is squishy. We're doing a little
Mhm.
bit of agentic work. We're writing our own code, wherever, but the inputs and outputs are still the same. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? It means that the skills a developer has that has always made a developer successful is architecture, and then code review, code design, like all those things. Those things are more important than ever, because those are the things that we do now that the
Right.
agents will probably never really like get very good at, because they require some nuance as humans.
Right.
So the tools has changed. Like, the
Yeah.
tool that does the work has changed, but that doesn't mean that the skills needed for either sides of the tool are different. And I think that's really important. And I think it's essential, I think, for people to recognize that are coming into tech, because and I don't know like what your background is, but like if you go to like if you went to like a 4-year university of computer science, nobody taught you like how to gather input and validate output, right? But I think it's required now, especially in this market where there's a conversation like, do we even need junior engineers anymore? I think the answer is obviously yes, because eventually you and I want to retire. And what happens when we retire is that there's nobody to like come in and look at my crappy code. So I think that there's still an essential need for those people, except now we need to train them on the skills that actually matter. I don't know how successful somebody will be if they take like a prompt engineering class in college, which I've heard is like a thing now. But I think that we still need systems design. We still need like, a lot of skill set built around like, okay, how do I validate things that are successful? And I think that's how the next iteration, the next generation of tech is going to go. It's like there's going to be less focus on like, oh, do you know like nlog notation, or do you like know big O notation, or can you write like network pipes? Like, I don't know if that's going to be as important to teach. What's going to be more important is it's going to turn more into, I think, into a what's the best way to phrase it? It's going to turn more into like a how to be successful as a software developer sort of curriculum, which I think will be very helpful, because I don't think the tools are going to get any, they're not going to swing back to like caring about algorithms, in my opinion, but that's a spicy take.
Yeah, no, that's a very good take. Very wise words. And, you and me also know that software is a people business. It's also about,
Yes.
How we work with people. So those are, critical skills as we go forward. All right. So, just like that, time flies when you're having fun. Like, it's been an
I looked
hour.
at the clock. I looked at the clock.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, Sam is good at this. This is quick.
Yeah, no, this is good, and we can go on for quite some time. But Isaac and me see each other thankfully at developer conferences, and we get to hang out and geek out on these things. But Isaac, thank you for making time. I know it's early morning; you got a lot to do, so thanks for making time. If I may ask you, like, what are some things you are looking forward to in the next couple of months, personally, professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that always, I mean, to get like in the world that Sam and I live in, like I'm going to be speaking at KCDC in a month or a
I'll
month
be
and a
there
half
too.
or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the reason why I love going to KC, I get to see people like my friend Sam. That's always
Yeah.
great. I think from a tech perspective, to shamelessly plug where I work, like JetBrains Writer 26.2 just came out, and there's some cool stuff in there that I've been playing around with. And I'm excited for some of the things that hasn't been announced yet that I've got an opportunity to play around with. I do think like in the broader tech landscape, one of the things that I have been very curious about is, we talked about a lot of these agent first tools, and I think you're seeing them start to figure out like who's going to win and who's not going to win. And I'm very curious over the next couple of months. It's like, are we going to see more adoption of Anthropic overall versus OpenAI? Are we going to see like any impact to Cursor ever since it got acquired by X? Like, I'm looking forward to seeing like these things, because I think one of the things that I am very exhausted with, there's too much news in this space, and I really want the news to like this news cycle to slow down a little bit. I'm looking forward to that. And I think it's going to start happening over the next 6 months, in my opinion, because as things start to stabilize, I think the pricing models are starting to stabilize a little bit. People are realizing that things are going to be expensive, and they're going to choose whatever vendor they want. And then obviously, when people start to choose the vendor they want, that means they're not choosing another vendor. And I'm interested to see like how that plays out over the next 6 months.
Well said. Yeah, there are bigger battles being fought, but let's keep delivering value in whichever tools that are in your arsenal. So, Isaac, thank you for taking time to come and chat with me. It was delightful to see your workflows, your tools, and I think we are all learning from each other to say, what extensions, what agents, what models, how are we getting things done? So it was very nice to see your and how you get stuff done. So thank you so much.
And thanks for showing me the Uno stuff. Like, I played around with Uno a while ago, and I was very impressed. And now, like, I mean, it makes sense that you don't look at something for like 6 months to a year, and it's like, oh, this is like way different.
Night and day,
like,
right?
Yeah, we live in this world where things happen so fast. So now I think what I've learned is I need to reach out to my friends at Uno and be like, hey, how can I get some of that goodness? So I need to play around with it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're an MVP. We are happy to give you a license so you can tinker around. So chat room, thank you for bearing with us. I think there are like 40 plus people watching, but it's been an hour, so we gotta get back to our day jobs. So Isaac, thank you again so much. Cheers to all that you do, and the .NET ecosystem is more richer because of the things that you always bring. So thanks to all of that, and we shall see you on the next next Pragmatic AI show. That's about every 2 weeks or so, every Thursday. So Isaac, I'll see you somewhere soon. And thank you so much for being on the show. And folks, take care, be productive however you are, and we'll see you around. And that's the show for us. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye.